Let's take a look ahead at some future drafts. The FIBA U17s have been completed. This is for the 2025-26 as well years. Let's take a look at who stood out for Team USA and across the globe. What's up? My name is Richard Stayman. You might know me better as Mavs Draft on Twitter or NBA Draft Film on Instagram. Pretty much the Mavs Draft brand name across socials. Really appreciate everybody who continues to make Locked On NBA Big Board the first listen of your day. We really appreciate you here at the network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA. It's one word for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So the FIBA U17s just wrapped up this last weekend on Sunday. USA won in insanely, overwhelmingly fashion. It is actually incredible how dominant they were. They were undefeated. And let's take a look at just even the game log. I think their closest game was a 23-point win. So there was a 23-point win. The next closest was a 41-point win. And then just going down the rest of them, I mean, they won by 85 points over Guinea, who has some guys who we'll talk about later on, or I'll talk about. They beat China by 82 or 84. They beat the Philippines by 96 points. They beat Team Canada by 51. They beat New Zealand by 80. Like, this team is insane. Like, this is just a historic team. Like, that doesn't sound real. And it's probably because if you put together the best high school players in the entire country, covers about 75 to 80% of them in the U.S. And some of these guys who play in EYBL or 3SSB, those are the big AAU circuits, or even Under Armour, they played in this tournament. Like, there are guys that I've seen in EYBL that were on this tournament and on a different team. Like, it wasn't just a bunch of nobodies. The U17s have historically produced a lot of different talent. So just going down the list, I mean, let's take a look at my board and see how many of these guys are in my top 10 for just next year alone. So we have AJ DeBonsa's in there, Cam Boozer. I don't think Darren Peterson was in there, but you have Jalen Harrelson was in there, Chris Senack, Caden Boozer, Jaden Toombs is somebody I really like as an old school big. The only player I really didn't know is JJ Mandequit. He's at Utah Prep, I believe, and he'll be teammates with he's at Utah Prep. He'll be teammates with AJ DeBonsa actually next year. And then those were just the 2025 guys. So the rising seniors that are also playing the 17Us in EYBL and Peach Jam in the upcoming week. But then you have 26 guys, I'm lost on my years. But you have Koa Pete, who his brother plays, I think he's still on the Saints, AJ DeBonsa, Tyron Stokes, AJ's he reclassified, but Tyron Stokes, who was teammates with AJ. You have Caleb Holt, Brandon McCoy, Jordan Smith. Like, this team was loaded. This is full of it had probably most of the top 15 across high school. So it was really impressive. There's really not a lot to break down. I mean, I'll just read across some insane numbers. Cameron Boozer. If you haven't seen Cam Boozer, this man is incredible. Obviously, him and Caden Boozer are the twin sons of former NBA star Carlos Boozer. If that doesn't make you feel old, I don't really know what will. I don't think there's any other NBA legacies on this list, thankfully, because there are a lot coming up. But with Team USA, Cam Boozer, I mean, just ridiculous. 14 assists, 5 turnovers. He was taking tough shots. He was pretty much their main shot creator. It was between him, Koa Pete, and AJ and Tyron Stokes. Those, I would say, were the top 4 options. And Cameron Boozer, he shot 70% with 139 points in 7 games. Per game, that comes out to 20 points a game on 70% shooting. And this man is shooting threes. Like, it was only 9 threes, but he's also taking a lot of different jumpers. Like, let's just look at the breakdown of shots. He only took 9 jumpers. He got to the rim that easily. 79% at the rim. Almost everything was at the rim. And that's not his entire game. Like, he's a 3-level scorer that can create for others. Every single player on this team had a positive assist to turnover ratio except one. So, which was Chris Senack, and that's not his game. But Caden Boozer, his younger brother, is more of a playmaker. He's not so much a scorer, but he has ways to score, and he's very smart, sees the game well. He's the cerebral player who may not get the scoring opportunities, but he'll do everything else for a team. Cam Boozer is really interesting because, I mean, I'd say the closest comp I have for him is Paolo. Like he is very similar to Paolo as a big player who can get to the rim. I think he's a better shooter, more projectable shooter. I think that's the big difference, and that's why Cam Boozer, before Cooper Flagg reclassified, it was a big debate who was the best prospect in that class, and then AJ stepped in as soon as Cooper left, so it was still a debate. And then AJ DeBonsa wasn't a slouch either. 29 assists, 14 turnovers, so 2-1, 59% shooting, had about 17 points a game. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Shot 32% from three, which isn't great, but the shot is pretty projectable. They also, I mean, one more thing with Cam Boozer. I mean, he had 19 steals in 7 games. Like that's really ridiculous. It's 2.5, almost 3 steals. Like these numbers are just ridiculous. Like if you just go down who the top scorers were, it's actually no Team USA player is number one. It's somebody who I'll get to in a little bit here, but Cam Boozer was the second best scorer at 20 points a game, right? 69, 70% from the field. You have just another Team USA guy, Koa Pete, who, if you haven't seen him, he's a pretty ideal forward. Anywhere between 6'7" and 6'9" is what I've seen listed. Power athlete, has a projectable jumper. I really like what he does. He's another guy that he's in the class. He's a rising junior. He's a rising senior. He's on the 3SSB circuit, so not as popular at Adidas as the EYBL circuit is, but I mean, he's a power scorer, gets to where he needs to be, strong frame. He knows how to impact the game. Like that dude is a winner. I really like him. My big concern I had though with one player and one player only was Jalen Harrelson. I like him and I still think he's a very talented player, but I worry about the jumper. I watched an EYBL game after watching some of the USA tape, and I think the jumper needs a lot of work. That's pretty much his big holdback, but he can get to his spots. Like right now, he's just physically better than everybody, and he knows how to use that with his skill. Like he absorbs contact well. He already advanced as a finisher, and he has good defensive tools. But kind of the same thing. Like he's not there yet. But that's kind of why I like him. I could talk about all these guys forever. Like I'm a big fan of really the next wave. This last year was tough to watch because there was no star power. But then you look at this and like in this draft, I should say, and then you have this looking 2 years into the future, half of these guys are going to be top picks. And that's not really much of an exaggeration. I mean, teams have already looked for Cam Boozer, AJ DeBonsa, and even Tyron Stokes. He'll be in the 2027 draft. Like that is how far we're talking. And obviously that is far away, but teams prepare. They don't throw their assets around as much as they did for this draft. For example, a team isn't going to value a 2024 number 4 pick as the same way as they would a 2026 number 4 pick, because even just looking at the 2025 class, let's just high school, you have AJ DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson, who I think he might be the best of the rest outside of Cam and AJ. Just super high level scoring, great athlete, elite shiftiness, his jumper hit or miss, but I think he's going to work at it enough to get there. And then you have Koa Pete, that's 4 players right there that every team should want. So it's important to keep that in mind because these are valuable assets that teams look at. And just a final couple of touches on this. Jordan Smith is actually probably the guy who I'm a big fan of here. So he's at Paul VI. He was a guy who I saw at City of Palms, which is a big high school tournament in December. He had 14 assists to 5 turnovers, shot really well, 49% from the field, was pretty efficient from near the rim, was okay from 3, could have been better, but it wasn't anything detrimental. And he got to the line a decent amount. Like I think he is, and also this man, like he goes after the boards. Like when you draw up an energy guard that plays bigger than how tall he's listed, he's like 6'3", 6'4". It is Jordan Smith. I really like his game. I think he's going to be a star one day. He's in the class of 2026 for high school. It's a 27 draft, but I really like his game. The entire Team USA was just dominant, though. That was the story of this, is that almost every single player on this team is going to be an NBA draft pick, if not all of them. And I think we're going to look at this in 5 years and go, holy crap, this team is all together. And this FIBA U17 didn't get a ton of attention unless you are a diehard draft person, I feel like, because the draft just ended, right? The 2024 draft, you're kind of burnt out. You're letting things go. Summer league's about to start. But figured in this break where there's not much action, talk about the U17. So we'll keep talking about, I'll keep talking about some of these other guys here, such as Sinan Juan, some of the Argentinian guys, and the Spanish standouts as well. And then Abdou Torre, who was the leading scorer, who I'll get to in a minute. But first, let's talk about Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Pricing on the Game Time app can actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed from Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I actually have used Game Time recently, went to a Nationals game against the Cardinals this weekend, and it was outstanding. I was able to look in the seats before I was buying, because it is, I don't know if you're wherever you are right now, the Northeast getting hammered with a heat wave. Didn't want to be in the sun during that. So it was really helpful to have that 3D viewing and seeing the seat. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA, one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, second segment. Let's talk about some of these other guys that had standout games. So I actually had posted about Torre, Abdou Torre. So he was on the EYBL circuit before joining. I think it's important to note. But he killed this tournament. He was the leading scorer, had 23 points a game. At the end of the tournament, he walked out of there with a 50 burger. I mean, it was pretty incredible what he did. He dropped 50 points, very efficient shooting, the way he attacks the rim, and also is 21-27. I wanted to throw that official number out there. Pretty much, even without his jumper, he would have dropped 30. But his jumper was falling, and that's been his biggest swing skill, and he has absolutely dominated. I mean, it was, even without that one game, he's still one of the top scorers, right? Like, he would be, in terms of total points, he would have been 10th without that game if he didn't play. He still would have finished with the 10th most amount of points. So that's really remarkable. And also 57% shooting. And for a guy whose swing skill is shooting, 32% isn't bad, with 71% from the line. Power athlete. He's really big. I think he's listed, I've seen him anywhere from 6'7" to 6'9". Actually, FIBA lists him at 6'5", so that's now the small end of it, but I think he's a little bit bigger than that. He was just really fantastic. Like, when you look at like a modern wing, if he's able to shoot, this man's going to be rising. I think I've seen him in the EYBL circuit. He's on the 16s, plays for Expressions, which is a Northeast-based EYBL team, and they've got some talent on that squad as well. I really like what he brought to the table. I think he has to be the biggest standout that isn't on Team USA, because just by default, kind of have to talk about Team USA. And also his teammate. Now, I may say this wrong, so forgive me, but Arafan, it's spelled like Diane, but I know it's not how it's said. Dion Jane, I don't know how to say it. I always botch names, so I apologize. But I really liked him too. Thought he had really good low post touch. Looked like a future like Omar Barlowe, right? That college big. Who knows if he'll be an NBA guy, but I thought he was really interesting. Also, the Chinese national team, I think they had a couple guys. My guy, Rafael Barlowe, obviously one of the hosts here, wrote about him in his Big Board Substack, wrote about some of the stuff he did. I was impressed by his work because, Sinan Juan's work, because I saw him in December again at City of Palms, where he didn't do too much. I didn't find him impressive. I thought he was way too passive. And that was still kind of the case, where you would see him kind of coast up the court, even though he's very mobile. He can be a rim runner. He didn't do that. And that was, I felt, a little bit worrisome, but still I liked what he can be, because he's 7'2" and he can shoot the ball. I think that, like, he only took 3 threes, went 1 of 3, but I mean, from the free throw line, he went 13 of, doing some quick math, 14. So he missed 1 free throw, like the entire, that's a good number. Then at 7'2", that's a really high shooting upside. Obviously small sample, but I do think stuff like that is really impressive. Can be that above the rim finisher. Just needs to really channel it a little bit more. I think if he could be aggressive and consistently, angry in a positive way, I think he'd go a long way. Also, his teammates stood out a lot too. Boyan Zhang, excuse me. Again, I'm terrible with names, even the simplest names, but he is a really impressive shooter. nice lefty stroke, has a deep, deep range on his jumper, can come off of screens. I think he made himself a prospect in this tournament. He finished in the top 10 of scoring. He's 6'8" and can come off of screens and shoot. There's a spot for you. I think Boyan Zhang is a future NBA player, at least an NBA prospect. I really liked what he brought to the table. And also, he's still like pretty young, 17 and a half. He's pretty in line with his age. Like, I think there's a lot to like there. I think he's somebody that definitely stands out. And then one more before we tap into the next group, but this is just staying in the Asia Pacific Islands, Oscar Goodman. If you don't know Oscar Goodman, you're going to have to remember that name. He's also 17 years old, 2 years away from the draft. But if you were to draw up a modern wing, I know I overused that a lot, but how is it not this guy? I mean, what he does on the court is so incredible. He's so smart. The shot's a little bit slow, but the touch is so good. He's very strong. I think he's going to go D1. I'd be pretty shocked if he didn't. I found him to be simply fantastic. I thought he was one of the best players in the entire tournament. He's athletic, was 3-level scoring, playing defense, really smart. He's got to be up on there. 17 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Like, what is there not to like? And also, actually, 1.5 steal, basically 2 blocks plus steals combined. So a lot to like there. He's another name to remember. This is going to be a lot of just listing names off. So forgive me for that. But I do think Oscar Goodman he might be the best prospect. I'll try and rank some of these guys that I talked about at the end. But let's get a word from our sponsors. We'll talk about some of the Argentinian and Spanish standouts. All right, last segment here. The Argentinian standouts. So this one, they had 2 guys that were in the top 10 of scoring. They had Tyler Kropp, who is mostly, I think he did most of his damage in the inside. That was probably where he was best. Really soft touch. And he's also a guy who he's playing stateside, actually. So you can see him. I don't know exactly where it is, but I know he's playing in the States. He's 6'8", has a lot of on-ball skills, needs to be more of a passer, but I mean, he rebounds very well. Big guy that can score down low with great touch, finish through contact, rebound. You're on a radar. I like Felipe Minzer a little bit more. I think he's more of that combo guard at 6'6", and that's a really good size to be a combo guard. Shot really well. Scored very well, also rebound just as much as Tyler did. 17 points a game, 7 rebounds, almost 5 assists a game. Thought that was really impressive. The 3-point ball fell at, let me get totals, 8 of 19, so 42%. The free throws, that might have suggested overachieving, I should say, because he went 32 of 49 from free throw line, which is 65%. So not ideal. But he is somebody I think that if he comes over stateside, which we're seeing more and more international guys do, I think he's going to be somebody who we talk about as one of the top international prospects. The same way, I mean, give him another year, let him develop, and I think we're going to be talking about him just as one of those next Argentinian guys, South American guys that's one of the top of the crop. So I like him a lot. I think Felipe Minzer should be absolutely on your radar. I like him a lot. Another guy, Felipe Quinones. I believe there's a relation to Lester Quinones, but I can't remember. I saw him also at City of Palms. He played with IMG. The efficiency wasn't there. You can't make anything up about that, as much as I'd absolutely love to. But if you want to talk about somebody who carried his team into games that they probably shouldn't have been in, I mean, they went to the round of 16. I think that was impressive. I'm trying to remember exactly how far they got. They might have even made it to a little bit further, but I think they lost to the round of 16s. They beat France. France had a really rough tournament. It's going to be a rare time where you don't hear French prospects at the top of the list. And it's kind of interesting. Let me just pause right now. We hear about how the USA is falling, the world is catching up. I think this is an interesting experiment because it's not the Olympics. The Olympics will be more telling because that's where you got the Luka's not in it actually, but like the Jokic, the Giannis, right? Like all the top international players who are a threat to some people who care about this stuff, but all these guys who are competing for best player in the world, right? I mean, really, say the top 3 candidates aren't from the U.S. So a lot of people think the U.S. is falling off. All this is an interesting way to think. Well, their closest game is a 40-point win. Is the world actually catching up? And then also France is the one that's coming up, and they had nobody stand out really in this. I mean, they had It's actually not entirely true. Hugo Imga had a good tournament, but as a whole, they really struggled. So I think that is a little bit side. I don't have necessarily a take on it. I think it's just an interesting thought experiment about where the U.S. in future tournaments stands. So I thought that was interesting. But let's talk about some of these Spanish guards here. I didn't finish up on Felipe Quinones. Felipe is a really talented pick and roll playmaker. What he does translates up. He's like he reminds me of a Jordan Poole type of player, but a little bit more in control. But he runs a beautiful pick and roll. He's an electric shot creator, but he really has to get stronger because there were a lot of times he would go up to the bigs and try and challenge them and win contests, try and hit those tough layups past them. And he just couldn't get strong enough where the shots were always falling shorter. He had to over compensate and it would miss long. It's just kind of stuff that you don't want at that age, but it's fixable, right? So I think that is that's a guy to keep your eyes on. God, I don't even know what class he's in. I think he's 2026 high school. Yeah, he's 16 years old. And he was one of the best players in the 17s, where almost everybody else is a full year older than him. I thought that was really impressive. Again, I like that. I like players like him where it's just you're a shot creator. You're doing everything by yourself. You're still making everybody else better. That, to me, stuff you can't teach. Now, the Spanish team, I'll end here before trying to rank some of these guys away from Team USA. That's where I have them. But I was impressed by pretty much 5 guys on Spain. And it was mostly their starters, if I'm not mistaken. So Guillermo Del Pino is really impressive as a ball handler. I liked what he did. I thought he was really the alpha of the team, just a primary guard. Really good at it, right? Gildas Jimenez is somebody who I've had my eye on since the U16s last year. Defense wasn't as good in this tournament as it was in the 16s, and that was his calling card, but really athletic, still made a lot of defensive plays, just felt like he was gambling or a little bit behind the curve on ball. And a lot of his strength is off ball, so it's fine, but the jump shot looked really good. That's a big question mark for him. If he can be an athletic shooting defender, that's a role in the NBA, and he's big enough. Let's see what his size is. I think he's like 6'7", but I've been off before because I thought Abdou Toure was 6'8", and they have him to 6'5", but Gildas is 6'6", so yeah, right in that window. And then also on that team, they have Ian Plateau, who I struggle saying that name. I think that's right. It's a weird spelling, but I mean, he's a really impressive rim big. Now, I liked him before this. The reason I'm bringing him up, I actually don't think he was a standout because he is really tall. I forget the exact height, but he struggled. He didn't even make 50% of his shots, and I think that's kind of worrisome. But if he gets it together, he's a smart player. Like he is somebody who I've scouted before. I think he quickly gets off the ground. I think there's a lot to like there, but it's almost theoretical at the moment. Yeah, he's 6'11", plays for Juventud in Spain. I don't even know if I said that one right, but at this point, I'm not even worried with the names. I really do think those are some of the standout players. Ian Plateau could have been a lot better. I think he's somebody that should have been better at 6'11", was usually the biggest player on the floor. But I don't, just looking at the game log, like he didn't really have that many dominant games. Against Turkey, he went 3 of 11. Against Puerto Rico, 2 of 8. Against Canada, 2 of 8. Like the ending was so bad. He started okay, but once he faced tougher and tougher competition, it was bad. And I think somebody with his size and mobility and fluidity should have been a lot better. Now, let's rank some of these players that I've mentioned. This might take a second because I'm doing this completely on the spot. I'm going to skip Team USA. I'm just going to completely skip them because it's unfair. They have probably the top 7 players in this. And actually, just for fun, let's rank some of the Team USA guys. I have to find this roster one more time real fast. But so I'd say AJ DeBonta is my number 1. I have Cam Boozer. And then my third one, look, I have concerns about his personality and attitude that I've heard secondhand. It's hard to doubt Tyron Stokes. His shot has gotten better, which is one of my big concerns. And the fact that it's gotten better, it kind of makes me doubt those attitude issues that I've been told about. So doesn't mean they're non-existent, but they goes away in a little bit in my mind where you see the actions turn into results. So I think Tyron Stokes has to be that third guy. Power frame. I mean, he's just a monster, has a lot of on-ball skills. Cam Boozer would be number 2 for me because I think AJ is just that good. It is not a knock on Cam Boozer. I know he's the best player in this, but AJ is an ideal 6'8" player. If you built a 6'8" player in the lap, it's him. Like you can't beat that. Two-way ability, can shoot off the dribble, create his own shots, get out of traps. I think that is so impressive. That's my top 3 on the team. Long-term, I might even put Jordan Smith number 4, but I'd have a hard time because he's smaller. He's probably my number 5 with Brandon McCoy or Caleb Holt. Actually, I've moved Jordan to 6 because both of those guys, Brandon McCoy, I didn't even get to talk about. I mean, he's a lead guard playing up a year in both this and EYBL, and he's always been the best player on the floor. Caleb Holt's a monster, just creating wing. Saw him also at City of Palms, really electric, just can get to his spots, wins with athleticism, has good skill, can play defense, has a motor, like all that stuff that checks out. Now, all the international guys that I talked about away from Team USA, I have Abdou Touré number 1. I think his athleticism, if the jump shot falls, the defense, everything is there for him to be a very successful player. I think at 6'8", Boyan Zhang is probably my number 2. I would probably put Felipe Quinones at number 3. Also, shout out to Dash Daniels, who had a really good tournament. He's Dyson Daniels' brother. He was on this list that I didn't get to mention, but he had a good tournament too. I would say after that, Oscar Goodman. And actually, I'd move Oscar Goodman up above Boyan Zhang. That would be my top 3. So Abdou Touré, Oscar Goodman, and then I would put Quinones, then Boyan Zhang, and then I'd go Felipe Minzer. I think there's a lot of value to those creation guys, even though Tyler Kropp had more points and everything like that. I think Minzer's the guy to remember for that team long term. A 6'6" combo guard's a little bit more rare than a 6'8" scorer with a less defined role. And I think just having those ball skills and that playmaking ability, again, he averaged, 17, I think? Yeah, 17, 7, and 5. I was really impressed with him. So that would be my top 5 away from Team USA for just, again, because I know that was a little bit clunky. Abdou Touré, Oscar Goodman, Felipe Quinones, Boyan Zhang, and Felipe Minzer. That would be my top 5 away from Team USA. And then the USA probably has the 5 outside of that. But we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to be talking more about with James. We're going to talk about Summer League, what we've seen. In the meantime, we wanted to take a break from Summer League for a second because there's only so much you can talk about these exhibitions with fringe NBA players. But we really appreciate, again, everybody who continues to make Locked On NBA Big Board the first listen of your day. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you.